According to the Bible, the final stage of discipline that a church might lovingly extend to one of its members who is living in some sin willfully and without remorse is actually to remove them from fellowship. Now, for clarity here, we're not talking about a church member who just stumbles into some sin accidentally. We all stumble at times. We say something we wish we wouldn't have said. We do something that's sinful and we're like, oh, I'm sorry, Lord, and we confess it and we immediately get clean. I'm not talking about stumbling into sin like that. I'm talking about living in some sin willfully, ongoingly, and without remorse. For a person in that situation, that final stage of discipline a church could lovingly extend would be to remove them from fellowship. Okay? In the Bible, this is viewed as a drastic and last-ditch effort to save the person's soul by, quote, handing him over to Satan for the destruction of his flesh so that his spirit might be saved on the day of the Lord, unquote. That's 1 Corinthians 5:5. I don't exactly understand what this means, but it appears clear to me that by kicking the person out of the local church family's fellowship, it's understood that that person is being, quote, handed over, unquote, to Satan. Call me crazy, but that doesn't sound like something good. Think about what it also seems to imply. If being kicked out of fellowship is the same as being, quote, handed over to Satan, unquote, it seems to imply that being in fellowship provides a person with a measure of spiritual protection and strength against Satan. Now that makes sense with the imagery of elders and shepherds or pastors, which we talked about a little bit, and how they offer those under their care not just guidance, but protection. Quick side note here. Remember, there was no separate Greek word for pastors. It was the same word that was used for shepherds of sheep. They were just called shepherds, whether they were people who took care of people or people who took care of sheep. They were all just called shepherds. It was the English Bibles that started to use the separate word pastors for shepherds when they were taking care of people, just to keep it clear, I suppose. But in the Greek originals, the term was simply shepherds. So personally, I think the translation pastor is slightly unfortunate because it loses all that original imagery. But anyway, the point here is that shepherds were not just meek and gentle guides. They were also rough and tough guardians. I mean, they were the kinds of men that had to be okay with taking on an occasional bear, lion, or wolf. Okay? So think rednecks, think shotguns, think soft hearts, but calloused hands. That's what a shepherd or a pastor was and is. And in the churches, it's both pastors and elders that serve in this capacity as the guardians of the flock, with Jesus himself being the chief shepherd. See 1 Peter 5:4. Anyway, this might be why the Bible seems to have the view that removing oneself from fellowship means removing oneself from spiritual protection and opening oneself up to Satan. Now, obviously, Satan can attack people when they're in fellowship too. But it appears that when someone is outside of fellowship, Satan's influence is completely unblocked and unmitigated. Maybe like a hacker trying to get people with their antivirus turned off versus turned on. Again, remember, this was the last stage in discipline for a person. The crazy thing is this. Isn't that exactly what we do to ourselves when we sever our connection with the local church? When we remove ourselves from under the authority and the protection of our elders and our pastors and the chief shepherd himself? It just doesn't make sense.